And welcome to our special Can Donald J. Trump win the 2024 election? It's going to be a time. I can't wait for it. I'm so here for it. It was like a year ago, people were getting kind of amped up, and I was like, man, I'm not quite, I'm in it now. Because it's going to get crazy. And we need to be the ones who keep our heads about us. As Rudyard Kipling said, being lied about, don't deal in lies. The left's goal is to get you to lose your mind, to go and be as hysterical as they are. Joe Biden gave his speech near Valley Forge. It wasn't in Valley Forge, near Valley Forge. He says, we almost lost America. We almost lost it on January 6th because of this guy, the shaman, the guy, the Viking helmet guy. The whole thing, we almost lost all of America. Here's what he said near Valley Forge.
Today we gather in a new year, some 246 years later, just one day before January 6th. A date forever shared in our memory because it was on that day that we nearly lost America. Lost it all.
Okay. We didn't lose it all. We weren't close to losing it all. There's no way. Listen, if that shaman guy, if all it is between us and losing it is the shaman, then we're in even worse shape than I've ever thought. We'll talk more about hysteria to wrap up the show. The point is, the left is trying to make their base hysterical. Actually, we got one more clip. This is Whoopi Goldberg the other day.
In fact, there's a reason Joe Biden ran the way he did. There's a reason he's running for democracy now, because that's really what's at stake. You worried that you can't pay your bill? Wait till the other guy becomes president, and you won't have to worry about it because you'll be in some camp somewhere, because that's his promise.
So good. She's not alone. Like, you hear that and you're like, wow, she's crazy. No, like, a lot of people think that. A lot of people thought that after 2016 when he won. So the media is going to be hysterical trying to get regular people who don't really pay attention to politics, trying to get them hysterical because they'll believe whatever the media tells them. And then you're going to be over here, calm, cool, and collected. You're not going to let that stuff bring you down, but to everyone else, they'll look at you not hysterical, like you're some sort of monster. Don't you care about democracy? Don't you care about rounding up Muslims and putting them in internment camps like Whoopi said is going to happen? You're just going to sit there while this monster destroys democracy? Yeah, I am. Because I'm not hysterical. And I remember what America was like before COVID. And I'd like that again. Please. So the theme of the show today is, can Donald Trump win? The Atlantic had a whole series, I think 24 articles, all under this big umbrella of if Trump wins. And they're hilarious to read. They're all these dystopian tales about the horrors that Trump will inflict on different aspects of our country and world if he were to win again, from the environment and the court systems and NATO and immigration and journalism and science. What will they do to science? And abortion, of course. They're great. They're really funny to read. One generic article they wrote in The Atlantic is why Trump won't win. All right, so I got to figure this out. Why won't Trump win? I'd like to know. Sure looks like he's gonna. The subheadline, his threats to democracy make him dangerous. They also make him a weak candidate. So here are their arguments. I'm not making up arguments. I'm not leaving out any arguments. Here's the argument, right? Number one, he attacks service members. Okay. Number two, he sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll in 1996 in a department store dressing room. Those are seriously the first two arguments, right? This guy, I got a platform at The Atlantic. I'm going to come out hot with my two best arguments. Those are the two best he's got. Third are the criminal convictions against him. We all know those are a joke. They help his campaign, so I don't know what movie he's watching. And then there's a great line. He said, Americans told pollsters that although they believe the economy is bad for others, they feel economically secure themselves. Do you? And he ends the article with this. He says the 2024 election will be a referendum on democracy. They don't even know what that word means. And on this matter, Biden's claims are obviously stronger. He's been governing as a traditional president, whereas Trump promises authoritarianism, openly says he wants to be a dictator for a day to accomplish certain policies. But what if his plans take more than a day? What if his one-day dictatorship extends to a year and then never ends? Everything they write is like that. Anyone who didn't realize that Trump was joking when he told Sean Hannity that his dictatorship's going to be a day, if someone took that seriously and they admit that they take that seriously, that's great. You can now completely dismiss everything that person says. That person is not a serious person. They're not worth listening to. By the way, on day one, Biden stopped building the wall and the construction of the Keystone Pipeline. That's what Trump said. Trump said on day one, my day one of dictatorship is I'm going to build the wall and drill for oil. Right? So Biden did the opposite of those two things. Was he a dictator for a day? No, he's a traditional president who's presiding over the attack of the former president for the first time in American history, along with the invasion at our border. But whatever, yeah, he's a traditional president. So the question is, can Trump win? There are people who are going to go to the caucuses and the primaries, and they're going to not vote for Trump, right? They're going for Nikki Haley. So there's some people not voting for him in the primaries. Why? Some people think he'll be in prison. Be in prison, can't vote for him. Not going to vote for a felon. First of all, I don't think these trials are going to be done in time for the election to roll around. I'm pretty certain they won't. And then if he wins, he'll just pardon himself. So that's that. Maybe he'll run out of money. So he doesn't have the juice to make it across the finish line. How much money does he even need? It's like, we've all heard of him. He doesn't need to increase his name recognition. Donald Trump might have the most name recognition of anyone in the history of the world. There's no newcomer to the scene. I don't even know how much money he really even needs. Will he be taken off the ballot? Here's Nancy Pelosi speaking of that.
If you believe he engaged in insurrection under the plain meaning of the 14th Amendment, you believe he's ineligible to be president.
Those laws, those are up to the states. They have different laws from state to state. I don't think he should ever have been president. The Constitution. But nonetheless, there is a view of the Constitution in Article 14, Section 3, that he should not be able.
We've done our in-depth analysis on that. What a total joke. And the Supreme Court's going to shoot that one down as well. Now, here's where the Democrats are smart, and they're always good at this stuff. When it goes to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says, no, you can't take him off the ballot, the Democrats are going to come back and say, oh, look, the Supreme Court, it's illegitimate. And the Democrats will win no matter what they do. Another reason why people don't like Trump is he's too mean. We're going to talk about this coming up next. Trump's actually not out there a lot. Certainly nothing like 2016. So is he doing that on purpose? Or is the media just not giving him as much attention? But it's to his advantage. That's for certain. Let me rebuttal all these with some numbers here. Now, of course, 2020 was a bonkers year with mail-in voting and all the rest. But these are some major swing states. In Wisconsin, 2016, Trump had 1.4 million votes. In 2020, 1.6. He increased his votes from 16 to 20. In Michigan, in 2016, he had 2.2 million votes. In 2020, 2.6 million. Pennsylvania, 2.97 in his first election, 3.37 in the next election. In Arizona, 2016, he had just over a million. In 2020, he had 1.6 million. In Georgia, 2016, he got just under 2.1 million. And in 2020, he got 2.45 million. He increased his votes from 2016 to 2020. Why would we not think he would increase them even more going into 2024, especially because people know the alternative. They know Uncle Joe. Right? Back in 2020, it was like, I'm just tired, I'm exhausted, we got to go with Uncle Joe, right? He'll bring us back to normalcy. And they just voted for him thinking everything would calm down. Well, look where that got us. But now people know. We know what Joe is. We know what Trump was. It's a simple choice. Trump the other day said he's going to make a play in New York and New Jersey, try to win Minnesota. And that may sound crazy to try to win some of these states, but look at Ohio. Obama won Ohio in 2008 and 2012. And Trump won Ohio in 2016 and 2020 by 8 points. That's now a deeply red state. Why not try to do the same in Minnesota, maybe even New Jersey, New York? So the question today is, can he win? Now, another question we'll explore is, will they let him win? Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer will be here, former senior advisor Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and coming up next, Erick Erickson on our special, Can Donald Trump Win the 2024 election? Mike Slater, The First TV, spread the word. Hey, welcome back to our special Can Donald Trump Win in 2024? I want to go right to the great Eric Erickson, host of the Eric Erickson Show. Mr. Erickson, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'm grateful you're here. So what do you think the biggest concerns are for people who either hate him, maybe ranging from hate to Trump hesitant?
There are a number. One remains the character issue for a lot of people, particularly when you look at the polling female demographics among people who consider themselves on the right. They just don't particularly like him. They were exhausted by the chaos and they remember it. And also, so many of the people who were in his first administration are now backing other people, saying this isn't the same guy, you won't get the same thing. That message has penetrated a little bit. I think those are the largest concerns. I don't know, though, if he becomes the nominee, that it actually matters compared to being opposed to Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's the question, right? Do you think it has been first of all, do you think this is accurate? I have the impression that Trump has not been, first of all, he's not on Twitter at all. So he hasn't been out there as much. I don't know if that's an intentional effort of his or if it's like a media not giving him the platform that they certainly did in 2016. But in the end, it seems like he's not out there as much. Do you feel it to be true? And do you feel that's to his benefit?
Yes and yes. One of the best things to happen to him was Twitter taking him off the platform. It made him less visible. People aren't actually going to Truth Social. They may see screenshots of it, but it's not getting the traffic. And so he's out of mind. So what helps him is that people remember when Donald Trump was president, we didn't have these wars and you didn't have inflation, you didn't have the economic crisis, and they've kind of now been able to forget about the chaos because he's not readily visible. I suspect if he becomes the nominee, suddenly he's going to be very visible. The media will make it so. I do kind of think it probably is part of his strategy to be less visible, except to his crowd at his rallies. And of course, in 2016, 2020, CNN, MSNBC, they'd go wall to wall covering these sorts of rallies. They're not doing it now. They'll probably start again.
Yeah, it's almost like Trump's the return to normalcy in a way, like a
Yes,
weird. That's how backwards and upside down everything is.
Biden promised us this. Yeah, Biden promised us a return to normalcy. He's given us anything but, and people do remember that for 4 years we didn't have all this chaos. We had online chaos on Twitter, but not global chaos with Trump.
Yes. What do you think about the left's talking point about democracy? So we talked about this a bit with the near Valley Forge speech, and it's all, democracy, democracy. And that's for the base. But do you think that will penetrate it all towards more moderates and will be effective in any real way there?
I would generally be dismissive of it, except I was in 2022, and the exit polling that's actually really reliable because we surveyed the people who actually voted. 13% of Republicans voted for the Democrats, and a majority of independents voted Democrat. For the first time since 2002, independents went with the party that controlled the White House. And a lot of them in surveys did reject candidates who questioned 2020. So that matters. However, when you get into 24 and it's actually the presidential candidates and not surrogates and other candidates who are running to sound like Donald Trump, people are going to vote their 401ks. They're going to vote their safety. And if the Republicans can focus on those things, I do think that they can overcome that. And it honestly doesn't help the Democrats to say Donald Trump's a threat to democracy when they're the ones taking Donald Trump off the ballot through extra constitutional means.
Yeah. Do you think the average person sees that hypocrisy or no?
I think to a degree, yes. When you look at, for example, the New York Times Siena poll, and I know people are skeptical of polling, but just keep in mind that in 2022, that was the most accurate pollster in America. And in 2024, what they're showing is actually the Democrats are 1% behind the Republicans on who's better able to protect democracy. They're basically, the public sees both sides as wanting power and doesn't really buy this either side as a threat to democracy rhetoric.
Interesting. What is your general rule of thumb or a posture when it comes to the base, the talk radio listener, the Twitter user, right? Those people, the bubble versus the rest of the country? I don't know. Is it a majority of the people who vote? Who makes up? Primaries are one thing, but in the general election, is it the bases that come out, or is it in the middle people, the moderates? How do you think about that? And
before I even got into to talk radio and stuff, I was a political consultant. I ran campaigns all over the country. And
Nice.
you do have to remember in the general election, a lot of people who don't vote in primaries come in. You can't alienate those people. Donald Trump has a message for them. And it's interesting that he outperforms all of his polling ever, except when you actually look at people who voted in 2020, he loses to Joe Biden still. And that's the red flag for Republicans. Donald Trump is outperforming all of his polling. He's doing better than he's ever done in polling. He's beating Joe Biden. But when you actually look at people who are prone to vote, that's where the problem is. He's got a blue collar coalition that turns out for him. But white college educated women vote more than anyone else. And they are Joe Biden's base right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what would you recommend Trump's messaging be? To what? Is he going to try to speak to the white college educated women, or is he going to try to get the people who don't normally vote out again?
He's got to try to get the people who don't normally vote. They'll come out in a presidential year. But if he wants to get the women in the suburbs who are college educated, crime and the economy. Women want their 401k to do as well as their husband's 401ks, and they want their children to be safe. You focus on crime and the economy, which play to the Republicans. It's a message that can pull suburban women away from Joe Biden.
Are people bothered by the trials at all?
I think people become very cynical about the trials. If anything, they're helping Donald Trump. We saw his polling skyrocket after the indictment in New York. Most people, there are a lot of people who think if he's found guilty, that's actually going to hurt him a lot with independents. It won't necessarily hurt him with Republicans. But people are looking on these things as very cynical. Here in Georgia, where I am now, the latest revelations about the Fulton County prosecutor hiring her boyfriend to be the special prosecutor makes it even more cynical for people.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Georgia. Do you think having two Democratic senators and what happened in the last election is an anomaly? Do you think Georgia will go back red again?
They're trending that way. Here's the problem. I actually am one of those people who doesn't think the election in Georgia was stolen from Trump. He lost it in the suburbs again. And suburban Republicans, they are more with Brian Kemp than they are with Donald Trump. He's going to have to lay some groundwork in Georgia. If the economy stays bad, it helps him. But if the economy improves, a lot of people will stay with Joe Biden. They don't want to rock that boat.
So I ask you the ultimate question. Do you think Donald Trump can win the general election in 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I didn't think he could win in 2016. I was very wrong about that, obviously. But come 2024, Donald Trump is literally outperforming every poll that he's ever been in now with national polling, internal polling. You've even got Barack Obama going to the White House telling Joe Biden, you've got to shake up your campaign team. Even the Democrats know that Donald Trump can win in 24, and that scares them.
Yeah, as it should. Eric Erickson, the host of the Eric Erickson Show. Eric, great to talk to you, brother.
You too. Take care.
Appreciate you very much. Coming up next, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, former special advisor to President Trump. Talk with him next. Mike Slater right here on the First TV.
I think it's very unfair when a political opponent, is prosecuted by the DOJ, by Biden's DOJ. So they're losing in every poll. They're losing in almost every demographic. And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. It'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box, and it's a very sad thing that's happened with this whole situation. When they talk about threat to democracy.
Yeah. Welcome back to our special Can Donald Trump Win? Want to go to Dr. Sebastian Gorka, host on Salem Radio, host of the America First podcast, and a former special advisor to President Trump. Also, Dr. Gorka is always generous enough to join us on my SiriusXM radio show, Breitbart News Daily, every Thursday at 8 o'clock. Dr. Gorka, how are you, sir?
I'm good, especially since my worries about you taking over Alex Marlowe's slot have been completely alleviated. And our discussions every Thursday are amazing. So, guys, you better tune in. Not just national security, it's big picture stuff. It's religion, it's philosophy. Tune in every Thursday morning.
I appreciate that. I got the more important question I want to ask you second. But let's do the first simple question. Can Donald Trump win in 2024?
I wrote an article with that title for AMAC. It's also on my Substack as well. Look, if you look at the empirical objective factors, absolutely. No man in human history has received more than 133 million votes for the presidency in 2 separate elections. So, it's just a fact that he received more votes than any incumbent in presidential history. The math is good. If the election were today, according to the polls, he would walk in with a 49-state slam dunk like Reagan against Carter. But that's not the issue. The issue is the objective fact. The issue is the left that is out of control. The left that is using everything. Fannie Willis in Georgia, Judge Engeron in New York, Jack Smith in D.C., Judge Chutkan, to put this man behind bars. They know they can't win with what Dan Bongino, my buddy, called the senile old bag of rotting oatmeal in the White House. They can't win fair and square. So he could win right now if there were a fair election. The question is, will they let?
That's the more important question. So let's go dive deep into that. Will they let Donald Trump win? What does that mean to you?
Well, look, this is kind of impossible to predict. You know my background. Before I joined the administration, I spent 20, 30 years in national security, and my thing was irregular warfare, counterterrorism, and most specifically, strategy. I love grand strategy. And I can tell you, I've written books on the grand strategy of our enemies like China, jihadi groups like ISIS, Russia, North Korea. I can do that. Why? Because they may be evil bastards, but they're actually rational actors. Even the weird ones like Lil Kim and the Hermit Kingdom can be predicted in their behavior strategically. However, I can't channel lunatics, Mike. I can't predict what people who are riven through with bile and hatred are going to do in the next 10 months. And that's the Democrat Party. I mean, what one piece of evidence. When you indict President Trump the first time in New York, and he gets more popular and he raises more money, you should say, that's not what we expected. And then you do it again in DC, and again, he's more popular. He raises even more money. At that point, what does a rational actor do? They say, we probably shouldn't do any more of this because it's good for President Trump. Instead, they indict him 3 more times. Then they try and remove him from the ballots in Colorado, in Maine. These people aren't rational actors. They are hate-driven lunatics. So I can't predict them.
We need to isolate that sound clip and make that on the board. I can't predict the behavior of lunatics, Mike. What is the human nature drive that is leading these people to lunacy?
Couple of things. So, number one, a desperation to maintain power. You look at what happened. Hunter Biden, the president's son, is in contravention of a legal subpoena. He's committed a crime. Congress has subpoenaed him, and he refuses to come in to testify behind closed doors. Instead, when that committee has its next hearing about holding him in contempt of Congress, what does he do? He comes into the hearing room with his entourage, with his lawyers, to sit down and gloat like a princeling out of the city states of Florence, right? He's, I'm a Biden. You can subpoena me. I don't have to do anything. So there's this arrogance to maintain power, number one. Number two, what's driving them? Just hatred. Why? I said this when I was in the White House. I said it after I left the White House. Donald Trump won despite the GOP, not thanks to the GOP. This is the first guy. I mean, look, it's funny that an immigrant like me has to remind the Americans who are born here that there's something very different about what happened in 2016. From George Washington to Obama, every single president in American history was connected. Why? They were all members of the political and military elite. They were all senators, congressmen, governors, or retired generals, from Washington to Obama. Along comes a real estate mogul, a reality TV star from Manhattan, and he becomes the president the first time he runs. Nobody does that. Not even Reagan did that. And what's the problem with that? You're not owned by anyone. Nobody made you. You're not owned by big oil, by big pharma, by the unions. Nobody owns you. As a result, he remains an existential threat to the vested interest in this thinking city, Washington, D.C., whether they be Democrat, whether they be Rhino, whether they be the big lobbies. This man is a threat to the swamp existentially. So these are, the core motivations for why they have to stop it.
You wrote an article also on AMAC about the horrific thought of the ultimate end of all of this. And you talked about all these other actors around the world, these other times and peoples around the world. And we make at our own peril, we think we're inherently different than other peoples around the world, where assassination has been a tool. It's happened a lot here. Is that on the table?
Look, I don't want to paint the devil on the wall, but when, the likes of Dan Bongino, who was a Secret Service agent, served multiple presidents, talks about that possibility on his show, the biggest radio show in America, when the likes of Alan Dershowitz, who's no Trump supporter, comes on my radio show and says he's worried for the life of the president. You have to take things seriously. And in the article and on my Newsmax show, I go through the litany of the last 100 years of political violence in America, whether it's Chonglos killing McKinley, whether it's the communists, let's be clear, Lee Harvey Oswald was a communist who defected to the Soviet Union, whether it's Lee Harvey Oswald with JFK, whether it's Sirhan with his brother RFK, whether it's Squeaky Fromm, whether it's Hinckley, or more recently, whether it's James Hodgkinson on a baseball field not far from where I'm sitting with a Soviet SKS rifle trying to kill all the Republicans at that charity baseball game and almost succeeding in murdering Steve Scalise, or whether it's Nicholas Ruska, ask the average person, who's Nicholas Ruska? They have no idea. The Democrat who traveled from California with a Glock, with a bayonet and zip ties to kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Why? Because he was pro-life. These are all leftists. These are all men and women of the left. And then you see what happened a month ago. In one weekend, the New York Times, the Washington Post, a whole issue of the Atlantic talks about President Trump as the dictator. And Robert Kagan writes a 5,300-word piece in the Post. When was the last time, Mike, you saw a 5,300-word piece where he calls President Trump a Caesar, like Julius Caesar? And then you go, okay, I get it. When we were in the White House at the beginning of our tenure, what were the Democrats doing in New York? Shakespeare in the City, in that theater, that open-air theater, was performing Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And how did they do it? Caesar was dressed like me in a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, and the actor was wearing a blonde wig. And what happened every night? Caesar was assassinated, covered in blood, stabbed 31 times by his fellow senators and politicians. And what is the audience doing? You can watch the video. It's been filmed by conservatives who are in the audience. They're clapping. They're saying, yes, they killed him. It's the effigy of Trump and he's dead. Look, don't listen to me. You can say I'm biased because I worked for the president in the White House. But when, truly sober, serious journalists like Molly Hemingway call all of that, from Kagan to the Post to everybody else, assassination info prep, you need to take this seriously. And I bloody well hope that Secret Service detail at Mar-a-Lago and with the president at the rallies, I hope they are on their game, Mike.
Yes. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Salem radio host. Dr. Gorka, where can people listen to you more?
We're across the nation on Salem channels, 300 plus stations. Listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We also broadcast on Rumble, the video. then check out my website where we have the audio feed 24/7. That's sebgorka.com. And for the articles that you so kindly mentioned, you can get them all for free at my Substack. That's Sebastian Gorka, one word, sebastiangorka.substack.com.
Former special advisor to the president, Dr. Gorka. Wonderful to talk to you, sir.
Thanks, buddy.
Grateful for you. And we talk to Dr. Gorka every day, every Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Patriot. I'm serious. We got to get that done. I can't predict the behavior of lunatics, Mike. I got to work on my Dr. Gorka impersonation. Sean Spicer coming up next right here on our special on the First TV. Can Donald Trump win?
The things that keep me up because you don't have control over them. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, where are we in this? Where are our hearts? What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
What is she so terrified about? Sean Spicer is here, host of the Sean Spicer Show, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on the First every weekday. Former White House press secretary, of course. Mr. Spicer, how you doing, sir?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Always good to see you.
We'll get some insight into Trump here. Where's his head at, you think, right now, at this point in the campaign?
I think at this point in the campaign, Trump's view is, I want to sew this nomination up as quick as possible and focus on the general. And I think that's where he's headed. And he wants everybody to jump on board. You've seen a bunch of endorsements coming from Capitol Hill, from places that you might not have expected, people that have always been strong on the Trump train, if you will. But I think he wants to consolidate the nomination quickly and then focus entirely on the general election. And I think, frankly, it's playing out that way.
What does one do when you have Iowa, you have New Hampshire, you have these first states, and some percentage of people don't vote for him, right? Even if he blows it out in these certain states, well, there's still a bunch who didn't. How do you bring those people back into the fold during the general?
So there's two things. One is, to your point, you try to bring them back in. So maybe that's by getting Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley to endorse you, which I think everybody's going to fall in line. I mean, it's just a matter of when and how. So that's part of it, is to try to get some of your rivals and their supporters to get on board. And then the second is just a reality. I mean, there are people out there who maybe didn't like Trump, but say, I like his policies, I don't like his style. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. And so they might begrudgingly get on board. But especially after what we're dealing with right now, Mike, I do interviews all the time on radio and other podcasts, whatever, and people will say, how can you vote for Trump, or why do you think the case is? And I've said this is the most unique situation in American history. You have a former president running against a current president. And so you can truly compare 4 years of Trump with over 3 years of Biden. There is domestically and internationally no greater of a stark difference between these two candidates and how they operate, but more importantly, the results they got domestically and internationally. That's it, full stop. And so I think Trump will make that contrast argument real quick, which is, here's what I did. Unemployment low, energy independent, a secure border, domestically, internationally, zero conflicts. Biden, open border, interest rates through the roof, concern about the economy, et cetera, et cetera. Internationally, Russia invading Ukraine, Hamas attacking Israel, Iran becoming more provocative, China in the South China Sea, trying to be very open about their plans to invade and take over Taiwan. All of that happening in 3 years. So you tell me which one you want. And I think Trump is going to pivot to that message very quickly. And it's not a tough sell. So I think if he does it well, people will start to come over quicker than, a lot quicker than I think some of the mainstream media and never Trumpers would like.
Yeah, we've all been alive the last 5 years. And you think of Trump pre-COVID, as you said, there's never been such a clear A/B test. There's no unknowns. There's no, I don't know what the Trump presidency will do. We'll see. Let's roll the dice. Or I don't know what Biden will be like. We know everything. Pick. Which do you want?
Well,
so it should be an easy sell, you think.
In the 2015 campaign, which is how a lot of campaigns that I've been involved in the last 30 years work, which is it's hypothetical, it's notional. If you elect Hillary Clinton, you're going to get this. I will do the following if I'm elected, which is what Donald Trump. And people sort of placed their hopes and dreams and said, I don't know that I really believe everything that Trump is saying because of his past. He was a Democrat. We don't know. He's never been elected. Some of the people he pals around with. Hillary Clinton, we know. We don't like it. We'll give Trump a chance. Well, this time, there's nothing hypothetical. It's literally, here was what 4 years looked like under Trump. Here's what 4 years are going to look like under Biden. Pick. That's it. Yeah. It's a simple proposition.
Which I think is why the Democrats have to make up some hypotheticals. And that's when they go to absolute lunatic land, which is, he's going to murder all of MSNBC and stuff like that. They have to make up these hypotheticals.
Getting back to the uniqueness of this cycle. When you're running campaigns, you're always trying to accentuate your positives and point out other people's negatives, right? So the Biden team is really trying to figure out how to play the economy, get people on board saying it's getting better. The one thing that they have working against them that they cannot fix is the concern that people have with the cognitive and physical decline of President Biden because of his age. And unless they make him Benjamin Button, it's not going to, there's nothing they can do. They can't say he's going to become younger or we're going to suspend him in time or we're going to help him up the stairs more. It's just not going to happen. And that concern continues to grow exponentially, not just among Republican and independent voters, but their own base.
Yes, I feel like there's not enough talk about a third party person and the spoiler role that an RFK Jr. or someone else picking off 2 points can make here. No one's really talking about that. What do you see in the scene there?
Well, I think you're right to point it out, Mike. They should be. Look, here's what I'll tell you. This is the perfect example. In 2016, Donald Trump won Michigan by 0.2%, 10,703 votes. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, got over 50,000 votes in Michigan. So I don't think it's going out on a limb saying that if Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot, Trump probably wouldn't have won Michigan.
Amazing.
Those voters, enough of them would have voted for Hillary, right? Fast forward to 2020, the Green Party candidate got 1,000 votes, and Trump lost Michigan by over 40,000 votes. So again, how the third party does, and this is why what you're asking is absolutely the right question. If you tell me how a third party does in this election, I'll tell you who wins. The 2016 election was decided over 3 states by 45,000 votes. In 2020, it was 3 states and 70,000 votes. This is going to come down to a handful of states. A third party that gets 10, 20,000 votes in some of those key battleground states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, or Wisconsin, can tilt that state and make a difference. All of those electoral votes can go one way or the other, depending on the strength of the third party. Last point.
Amazing.
Here's where it all comes down to. Ballot access. So the big talk right now is Robert Kennedy Jr. Here's the problem. Robert Kennedy Jr. is on one ballot. He's on Utah. So the guy could poll at 40, 50, 60%. If you can't vote for him, it doesn't matter. And ballot access is a major, major problem for non-major party candidates.
Wait, how is he only on one ballot? Why is he on there and why is he not on every other ballot as a third party person?
That's because when you're a third party, states have created a system that benefits major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. So even the Green Party has to fight for ballot access. And they've got it in certain states, but then what they do is they'll make you maintain that ballot access. So you'll have to have X amount of vote in the last election. You'll have to have been getting this many signatures. Kennedy in Utah, it's a relatively easy process there. I think it's 1,000 signatures and you stroke a check. In a lot of states, they intentionally try to keep minor party candidates, independent candidates off the ballot. So again, if Robert Kennedy can't get on a ballot and you can't vote for him, then it doesn't matter how many people support him. And right now, he's on one ballot.
Wow. Oh, that's huge. Oh, that alleviates all my concerns that he would be a spoiler here. Because you're talking about like if someone gets 10,000 votes, well, what if someone gets 5% of the vote? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh, well, now the whole game is different. Okay,
Correct,
that's
and
great.
that's the
Okay,
point,
so-
right? So you take a state like Arizona. What was that? 10,000, 14,000 votes. I can't remember off the top of my head. But you get a third party candidate. Let's say it's Jill Stein. She's running again as the Green Party candidate. If she can get 20,000 votes, that's a huge help to Trump. If Robert Kennedy were to get on the ballot, well, I don't know. The No Labels team is spending tens of millions of dollars trying to get ballot access. They're the ones that I would watch. Number one, can they get on states' ballots and how many? And number two, who ultimately their nominee is. Now, if it's Joe Manchin or a Democrat, that would help Donald Trump. If John Huntsman, the former Republican governor of Utah, were to be their nominee for president and then they had a Democrat as vice president, I think that would probably hurt Trump a little. And so who their candidate at the top of the ticket is and how many ballots they get on in the states is going to be critical. But the question that you're asking, Mike, is absolutely the most important question of this cycle. Who wins this election will come down to how many third parties are on the ballots in key battleground states.
And we got to run here, but is that already decided or is there still time to get on other states?
Great question. It's still so each state has a deadline. They all vary in each of the 50 states, and they all have their own prescription to get on. So some of them are signatures, some of them are you pay a combination of a filing fee, et cetera. But they're all different and they all have different deadlines. And so that's the key. So what you have to do to get on Pennsylvania is not the same as Michigan. Utah is one of the easier ones, which is why Kennedy is on there. But he's claiming that he's going to spend over $10 million focused on just ballot access alone.
Wow. Oh, huge conversation here. All right. That's the type of insight you get at the Sean Spicer Show every weekday at 7 o'clock Eastern, former White House press secretary. Sean, great to talk to you, brother.
You bet. Thanks, man. And obviously, if anyone can't watch, they could go subscribe on YouTube or Rumble or Apple. I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do it. Thanks, man. All right. Let's wrap up our special here. Great stuff. My final thought, my final suggestion is to make sure that we always keep a level head throughout these next few months here and be a happy warrior. We should do a whole special on what it means to be happy warrior, actually. But keeping a level head, staying calm throughout this time, especially when the left is in total lunatic hysteria mode, and they're going to try to bring you down with them. Because people who are hysterical, or people who are very angry, but people who are hysterical are easily manipulated. And that's what they want to do with people. And I'm reminded of the scene from Hamlet. And Hamlet's talking to, it's our second Shakespeare reference today. Hamlet's talking to Horatio. And he says, so we'll put it up on the screen here so you can read yourself. We're low on time, so you can read the Shakespearean yourself. But the point of it is, the translation here is, Horatio, I admire you because you take everything that life hands you, the good and the bad, with a calm acceptance. You're passionate, but you never lose your reason. You've mastered your emotions. And he says at the end, for that reason, I keep you close to my heart. He values Horatio because he keeps a level head. We need to be Horatio. And this is ancient wisdom. This is biblical wisdom to keep a level head through it all. Titus 2 talks about who you should make elders of your church. And he says, older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, in love, and in steadfastness. That's who we need to be throughout this election as well. Steadfast means to stay. Stead means to stay, and fast means to, but stead actually has more of a connotation of relying on. So you stay, but you more rely on. And then fast means like a fastener, like you stay, hold true to something. So you hold true, you stay hard in the truth. That's what steadfast means. So let's not let the hysterical bring you down. Mike Slater, The First TV. Spread the word.